Shalom and welcome to His Israel here in Jerusalem. This is Karen Hannah, and we're going to be looking at the fifth Hebrew month of Av. Now, it's the word Av actually means father. So it is a month where we'll be focusing on looking to the Father, hearing the Father's voice, and how do we do that? But it's a very paradoxical month because the first 9 days of the month start off as a time of semi-mourning, and which ends on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, with the fast day, which is a very serious fast day that the Book of Lamentations is read, and Eicha. And people sit here in Jerusalem. Many people go down to the Kotel, the wall, and pray and sit on the ground and are reading the Book of Lamentations. But we see this month in a paradoxical way. It becomes a time of joy and celebration. So we'll see how mourning turns into joy during the month of Av. Just 1 second. Thank you. I dropped my papers. Thank you for being understanding. So especially the more Orthodox, but even traditionally, during the first 9 days of Av, no weddings are celebrated, no parties, happy music isn't played. It really is a time of withdrawing from the physical and looking into one's heart. In a way, it's a preparation for the next month, which will be Elul, which is at the time of the high holy days, as they're called. It's a time of really pressing in with teshuvah, with repentance. So Av is like a little preparation for Elul as well. But we'll see that once the Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the fast day is over, then weddings start taking place. All the summer weddings happen, and they're all very, very joyful. And even on the 15th of Av, which is Tu B'Av, it's known as Sweethearts Day in Israel. So it really does turn into a month from the time of mourning, which is really mourning the destruction of the two holy temples in Jerusalem, the exiles, and all the tragedies that have befallen the Jewish people throughout history. It's a time of remembrance of all those tragedies and the sad things that have happened. But then we turn around and say, but there's hope. And we look to our Father and we hear His voice, and there comes the comfort and the reassurance. I'm sure you'll agree that there's just so much noise and physical din in the world today that the theme for this month will be hearing. And what do we enjoy most? Well, it's, apart from hearing other people talking and sharing, the thing we enjoy most is music. So the theme is going to be hearing and music, and the voice we most want to hear is our Father's voice. So we'll look at that. And the part of the body associated with the month of Av are the ears. And of course, the main functions of the ears is hearing and balance. So all these things we'll be looking at through the month of Av. Now, with all the noise that's going on in the world, it reminded me of how do we really press in and hear. Shalom, Alana and Joan and Annette, really good to see you being able to join in today. How do we know when we're hearing God's voice? And what I thought of was the account in the Bible in the first book of Kings in chapter 19 and verse 12. And that's about Elijah. Now, he just had that big victory on Mount Carmel, and God had sent fire from heaven and destroyed all the prophets of Baal. And instead of being really quite proud of the victory, what is Elijah doing? He's running for his life, and he's running away from Jezebel. We know because Jezebel has sworn to kill him. These were her prophets. So, but he's just running for his life, and he's wanting to hear from God. But in chapter 19, it talks about how he gets to this cave, and there's a huge storm, and then there's an earthquake, and rocks are breaking, and there's a great wind. But the Lord was not in the storm and the earthquake. It says in verse 12, and after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper, a still small voice. So as much as Elijah was crying out to God, God didn't yell at him through the earthquake and the storm and the wind. He just spoke to him in a still, quiet voice, almost a whisper. And I think it really shows you that God, when things seem out of control, like they were, Elijah had completely lost his balance and control. And by whispering to him and speaking softly, he brought calm. He brought calm and enabled Elijah to respond to that and voice his fears. And then God was able to reassure him, and his balance was restored. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're in a loud place, a room like a wedding or a concert, and it's really, really loud. And this happened to me just recently. I was at a wonderful wedding here in Jerusalem, and there were many people, and there was a lot of noise. But I saw a couple who are friends that I hadn't seen for years, and I really wanted to catch up with them and hear from them and share with them. And so there we were, yelling, trying to yell to hear each other over the noise. And the next morning, I woke up and my voice was just about gone. I could hardly speak. I'd really damaged my vocal cords or strained them, I think. And then I came across an article that said, if you're in a situation like that, the best thing you can do is really lean in and whisper. Just whisper in a very soft voice, and then they'll have more chance of hearing you. So I thought, well, how interesting that I really proved that point. And here, when God wanted to speak to Elijah, he just spoke in a very soft whisper. And so in that case, Elijah was able to hear and understand. Now, another cause of all this noise and clatter in our heads is also voices that have kind of been recorded in our memory or in our minds, and they're very demanding sometimes. And I think Elijah was hearing these voices saying, you're not able to cope, you're gonna fail in this, you're gonna be killed by Jezebel, and these voices can feed us messages that make us feel afraid and get in this fight or flight mode like he was in, or defensive or negative, and have this doubt of our own ability to cope. And it's, these messages might be, they've said, from childhood experiences and from growing up, depending on the environment we grew up in and the society we grew up in. So, and sometimes they have half truths in them, which brings confusion, because maybe Elijah had failed at one point and said, you see, remember that time, now you're also gonna fail this time. So it's a very, sad thing actually, and we should logically be able to ignore them or refute them. But it doesn't often happen because they can be very demanding and very loud and strident. So, and they bring confusion. But when we turn our attention to God's voice of truth, then we hear the whisper of reassurance, and the message won't bring confusion and doubt and anything negative. It'll just give like a reassurance and a quiet confidence, and then now I'm hearing the voice of truth. And once our ears are tuned into his voice, it brings a sense of peace and calm, and it almost makes me think like a warm talit, like a prayer shawl, just coming over you, and just bringing that balance, bringing that confidence, bringing that rest and assurance and shalom. And that's one way we know that we are hearing God's voice and the balance is restored. And you know what happens? The other voices just simply fade away, and you can just hold on to what his voice is saying. And the more we can recognize it and become adept in hearing it, we discover the beauty and the power in his words that are being conveyed to us. And then the more we can walk in that peace and reassurance and the confidence that he gives us. And then wonderfully we can share that. His voice is almost like a quiet breeze rustling in the leaves of the trees, and it's just a soft but very beautiful, reassuring sound. And we'd be able to share that as well and bring moments of comfort and peace and confidence to others in the midst of all this clatter of the world. So may it be so, and may that we really be able to do that. The importance of hearing is really emphasized. Now, all this is part of prayer, by the way, the hearing of God's voice. He speaks to us sometimes even through his written word, but that hearing of his voice and being able to respond and voice our concerns or our fears or even our hopefully praise and thanks, that's all part of prayer. And the most important and often prayed prayer in Judaism, of course, is the Shema. That's the first one children learn before they go to bed, and so it's the Shema Israel. And what does that mean? Hear, O Israel. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And do you know that in every Torah scroll, Hebrew Torah scroll, whenever the Shema is written, like in Deuteronomy, the end of the word Shema is an ayin, and that is always enlarged, bigger than the other letters. And at the end of the sentence you get Echad, which means one. And the end letter of that word Echad is a Dalet, and that also is enlarged. Now, nothing is done for nothing in the Torah and with the Hebrew letters. So when you put the Ayin and the Dalet together, you get the word Ed. And Ed in Hebrew means witness. So it's just, I was trying to think, I'm sure there are many, many reasons that people, the commentators will come up with, but I was just thinking, well, the more we shema and hear his voice, the more we can witness to his presence and to the truth of his word. So it all sort of works together, and that really illustrates how when we fully hear and our hearts are receptive and we understand what his word is in our hearts, and we can share that, we can share the truth of his presence and word, then it's a wonderful witness. Now, there was another interesting thing, that when you take those two letters out, you left with letters, the Shin, the Aleph, Shin, Mem, Chet. And those words, when you arrange them, spell Esmach. And Esmach means, it's the first word in Psalm 104, verse. So the first word there in Psalm 104, verse 34 is Esmach, and it means I will rejoice. So once you get the id out of the words and become the witness, then you can rejoice. Esmach, I will rejoice in the Lord and in His word to me. And I thought that was just a lovely, lovely little observation with the Hebrew letters. And there's one more that I have to share because this one was just so special. It's even the name Israel, Israel. If you take those letters of Israel and just rearrange them, what do you get? You get Shir El, the song of God. And here we're talking about song and music and hearing. So even Israel becomes the song of God. And as His people, God wants us to be singing His song, and He wants us to be able to share that song of joy and thanksgiving and praise with the world. So I thought that was really beautiful. I just would really love to share this poem with you. It's because we're talking about hearing God's voice, praying in response, and it's about prayer, really. And this is a poem called A Prayer for Prayer. And it's by a Rabbi, Sheldon Zimmerman, who's actually associated with the Hebrew Union College. And this is what he says, and it's just beautiful. He says, "Oh my God, my soul's companion, my heart's precious friend, I turn to you. I need to close out the noise, to rise above the noise that interrupts, the noise that separates, the noise that isolates. I need to hear you again. In the silence of my innermost being, in the fragments of my yearned for wholeness, I hear whispers of your presence, echoes of the past when you were with me, when I felt your nearness, when together we walked, when you held me close, embraced me in your love, laughed with me in my joy. I yearn to hear you again." Now, before I go on, doesn't that remind you of Adam and Eve? This could be a cry from the hearts of Adam and Eve, that they're yearning for that closeness, that intimacy that they had with God in the garden. So it continues, "In your oneness, Echad, I find healing. In the promise of your love, I am soothed. In your wholeness, I too can become whole again. Please listen to my call. Help me to find the words. Help me find the strength within. Help me shape my mouth, my voice, my heart, so that I can direct my spirit and find you in prayer. In words only my heart can speak. In songs only my soul can sing, lifting my eyes and heart to you. Adonai Svatai Tiftach. Open my lips, precious God, so that I can speak with you again." So I thought that was just so beautiful and fitted in so well with our theme for the month. So let's go on to music quickly, because what is this extraordinary power in the gift of music that God has given us? In some ways, music and song, they're even more effective in conveying thoughts or emotions. Music can really speak to the heart in ways sometimes that just speaking can't. And, medical science has even proven that a baby in the womb responds to music and to voices, and especially the father's voice, funnily enough. So it's important what sort of atmosphere and environment a mother keeps her baby in the womb settled in. And it's even been observed with Alzheimer's patients, that debilitating disease of Alzheimer's, that with those patients, their appreciation of and their musical gifts, if they have any, stay with them the longest, that they can even maybe sing. I have a friend whose husband's just really in the last stages of Alzheimer's, and yet on Shabbat he suddenly started singing some of the songs, and it was just so special and so beautiful. So that was a proof as well that music somehow stays in one's spirit and in one's soul. And of course children love to be sung to, and they love to learn all the little childhood songs. And in Israel, actually, there's a popular song called Lo Nafsik Lashir. Don't stop singing. Let us not stop singing. And it really is a joy to. Sometimes I walk along the street and I hear someone whistling as they're working, or they're singing as they're walking along, and it's just a joyful sound. It's a sign of a happy heart, I think, and doctors have said singing is healthy. So let's not stop singing, even if it's just in the shower. Keep singing. And of course, seriously, the Bible really emphasizes the power of music. You can think of young David when King Saul was having real disturbances in his mind and his spirit. When David played his harp and sang to him, it would soothe him and calm him. So it really soothes the soul to hear pleasant music. And it's inspiring to the spirit. When the holy temples were standing in Jerusalem, which is what we mourn now at Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temples, I don't think it was only the destruction of these beautiful buildings themselves. It was a house of God, but also, do you know that 24/7 almost, the Levitical choir was singing and worshiping God. There was constant praise and worship and music that King David had, mostly the Psalms that King David had composed, and he'd even composed the melodies. So there was this beautiful worship and song and praise being heard, constantly, which must have been wonderful. So, but we do read in the prophet Isaiah in chapter 51 and verse 3, how when the Lord redeems and restores, the result is thanksgiving and joyous song. And we see that all the way through the Bible. One, of course, great example is once the Israelites had been redeemed and restored from slavery in Egypt, there was a wonderful song at the sea, that was one example. And you can find them all the way through the scriptures. And we are very, very blessed, even in our day, to see the restoration and redemption. And that's why I think God is raising up song. He's raising up the tabernacle of David, as it were, with song and praises today. Let's just see. It says in 51 verse 3, for the Lord comforts Zion. He comforts all her waste places and makes her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. So there we have it, and we're seeing how he's restoring the desert like a garden and the wilderness like Eden. And again in the cities of Judah, there's the sound of song of joy and the song of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. So we're so blessed to be able to see that today. Now, another thing in our time, that finally, let's just have a final look at music, because it's not only people, well, actually, first I mentioned that there's, I don't know if you've heard of that Japanese researcher, and he's an author, and he's written these amazing books. what's his name? I have one here actually. It's Masaru Emoto, and he wrote a book called The Hidden Message of Water, The Hidden Messages in Water and the Secret Life of Water. And he proved through his experiments that even sounds and music and voices and words have an effect on water. And because our bodies are made up mostly of water, it shows how our bodies respond to words and sounds. And as a teacher, I know that the way you spoke to children, if you were encouraging and positive and caring, they would respond wonderfully. And of course that applies to parents, how you speak to your children, even what they allow to watch on TV or video games, or all these things have an influence, even if it's unconsciously, because our bodies are responding to this in water. And he said actually, and I must see if you can see this, I'm going to hold it up, because I was so pleasantly surprised when I saw what the water's response to the word happiness was. So the response to happiness was, isn't that beautiful? It was this, he froze the water drops, and as they formed crystals, he photographed them. So this was the photograph for happiness, and you can see it's a beautiful Star of David. I was really happy about that. And look what happened for unhappiness. The whole water drop just went into chaos and disintegrated almost. So that was the difference. The same water, but being given the word happiness and being given the word unhappiness. So these things are really fascinating and very, very important, I think. And I mean, we know that not only people, but plants and animals respond to water. They've also done experiments with plants in greenhouses and played beautiful classical music or pleasant folk music or pleasant jazz music even, and the plants all thrive and flourish. And then when they played heavy rock or heavy metal music, what happened to the plants? So that just happened. The plants just died with this heavy metal music. So I know some of my lovely gardener friends, Cindy and Debbie, and I'm sure others too, that even if you can just speak and sing to your plants in the garden, and you see them grow even more beautifully. And we know that all creation is singing. There's the birds it's as if they're praising their creator all the time, and we know that all creation has this song, but it is waiting for the full redemption of things. That we can praise now, but we know it's not the full redemption. So there's still time to mourn, but there's also time to rejoice. And we're told in Romans chapter 8 verse 20 and forward, the creation itself will be set free from the bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in pains of childbirth until now. So just as we sometimes do, we can groan if things are painful, and we can take our troubles to the Lord. But even creation is groaning, as we see sometimes. But it can also sing, and when it knows it's valued and cared for, and it hears the harmony and balance of the people around it, and who are speaking words and singing songs of love and harmony and joy. So may we continue to sing songs of praise and thanksgiving, and just hear that beautiful soft whisper as our Father in heaven is wanting to speak to us. And may you be blessed through the month of Av, even if it starts off a bit slowly, but look forward to the restoration and the joy that our faithful Father has promised will come. Blessings to you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.